So our young foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, said at the 24th of February, we woke up in another world. The world was different.
And we will now hand over to Gunther Mohr, who will lead us through the first part of today's webinar. So over to you, Gunther.
I have my difficulties to say good morning or good day. I don't know whether is it good, because I will give you some stimulation to the topic of power, which we booked a topic long before the 24th of February, and the world has changed. And I will give you some slides also to stimulate some thinking about it. And so I take the slide. Is it okay, Chitra?
Yeah, it's fine.
So
You could do a full screen.
How is it possible? Is it this way? It's better? Yeah. I hope it's okay. So our young foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, said at the 24th of February, we woke up in another world. The world was different. At that day, something has changed. So the original plan, there is a mistake in it. The original plan, what we would talk about in our SEC committee, was power in several contexts: the personal aspect, the relation, and all this kind of perspectives of power. But then I changed it a bit, and I will focus on in the next 9 minutes on three aspects: the term power, like Ilana also mentioned a quote from Nelson Mandela. I will also talk about structural power, because I find it very interesting. And then what is about the current escalation, especially around the Ukraine. So the first thing, power description, where we have a lot of great guys in TA who thought about power, and I like to mention Claude Steiner and Alan Jacobs. And the first thing that Steiner said, that power is in everything, even in a cell or molecule, you can find it in all relations. So to say, if you have this construct of reality. And then in a second quote, I will read it because it is important for that what we are confronted with in a moment. Persons whose power or lack of it is exclusively based on the manipulation of others suffer from powerless or authoritarian scripts which complement each other. And I think that is an interesting hypothesis about thinking about what is was a guy like Putin or the people around him. And then you have to keep in mind that power is not something fixed to a person. Power is a relational system. There we have masters and followers. And Alan Jacobs, in his thinking about nationalism in the TAJ 1990, he said, there is a child ego, this state distortion of fact. And also there are parent injunctions with resulting adult contamination or exclusion. And this is an explanation with these masters and followers that we have. And I think that is so very interesting, because the Ukraine is 800 kilometers from the place I'm now. It's not far away where the war is happening in the moment. And I have some people in my surroundings who are out of the former Soviet republics. And if you look down on the slide, I have had a real problem, real discussion in my house with people coming from former Soviet republics, one from Kazakhstan and two from Armenia. They are not very familiar to German language. Therefore, they are watching Russian TV. And they had a totally different view on the whole thing on the war in Ukraine. They said Ukrainians are Nazis and the Russians are freeing them, and it is not a war. It is, as Putin has called it, some military operation, limited. And that is a good example for what is meant by the fact of structural power. So power is not only the using of people in the moment, but it's also something that people that is there before we really realize it. A lot of people, even in very informed circles, were surprised about what happened there. And this phenomenon of the structural power, the power that is there before we really notice it, it was mentioned by the Norwegian, I think he is a psychologist, or maybe he is also a sociologist, Johan Galtung is his name. He said there is this structural power besides personal power, and often the structural power is before it comes to personal power. So this has different forms, and then we come to our TA terms. Structural power has a lot to do with discounting of phenomena, of reality, of meaning, and what we now really experienced around this power play, so to say, is that a lot of reality maybe from both sides, but I think it's more from the Russian side, is really discounted. And that is made by structuring the press, structuring information, and doing propaganda instead of having a free press. And I started, when I started thinking about, I'm a constructivist, systemic transactional analyst. I always have the idea that there is a balance of things, but I think we now have it. I think that I really learned to love the democratic structures. And on the other hand, I see this war between democratic and autocratic, means abusing of power structures. And I think that is very, very interesting in the whole thing. And there is a lot of fear behind that in the autocratic systems who use or abuse power not to get free discussion, dialogue, changing of elites in a democratic process in their countries, and so on. And now, and that has really revealed in the moment. And let me add that especially Donald Trump also put a lot into this culture of autocratic thinking, of discounting of phenomena, of lying, of discounting of election results, and all this kind of actions that he did. And so he also fostered this new situation that now exploded in the Russian war. So, and the last thing I'd like to show you, it seems to be complicated. It is the so-called conflict escalation ladder about power from an Austrian psychologist called Friedrich Glasl. And he describes how a conflict escalates from a hardening of positions in the beginning, over debates and polemics, then deeds instead of words, attacks on reputations. You could follow in the way the conflict escalated in with Ukraine and Russia, but then there was a real jump from this point to this. The Russian side, they lied. They said, we don't want to attack Ukraine, and everyone, or not everyone, not the American Secret Service, but a lot of people liked to understand it and to say it's right and to believe it. But then they didn't even do much threatening strategies that are normal in a conflict process. They really jumped to the limited destructive blows and to the fragmentation, so to really doing a war. And that was very interesting. That surprised a lot of people in this kind of process. And Friedrich Glasl says the worst is the last step is that all together are in the abyss. There is no restriction of own suffering, of others suffering, and this is we Germans also have experienced that in the Nazi era, in the Second World War. At the end, in 45. Not me personally, but our ancestors. That is the big threat in it, and therefore a lot of people in our country are very frightened about the threatening with the nuclear weapons, and this could be the last step. So now we are in this area, and what Glasl said, we have to have some kind of intervention. Normally you have some power in the world that somehow goes into the conflict and gives a solution, but that does not exist, because normally this institution is the UN Security Council, but now one of the members of the UN Security Council is the attacker in the war, and therefore that doesn't exist. But I'm optimistic. I hope that we can step back somehow in the ladder of conflict escalation, and that we could come out. So this is what as impulses that are stimulation that I would like to give into the group in the moment. Chitra, am I right with the time?
Yes.
Yes, it is time. Yeah.
So maybe, but that should not give you a certain direction. Now we have space for you in a group, in breakout rooms. Chitra, would you like to give the questions?
Yes. Would you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah. I stop it.
I think I'm putting it on chat, and you can also read that out if you'd like me to read it out. That's also fine. Gunther?
Read it out as well, Chitra.
Yeah. How do I experience myself in it in terms of power? And how do I cope with it, especially in my behavior with others? These are the two questions for reflection in the breakout rooms for 25 minutes. I'm just going to, do you want to say anything more, Gunther, on this?
Yeah, so one of the questions is more of from the inside on the internal reaction and what are my feelings about it. And the second second perspective is what I'm doing to the outside, is particularly in how I'm talking about to others, and how I share my experiences. Thank you.